There was a time when I realized something really uncomfortable about myself. When I was too calm, too patient, too understanding, I became the storm. The more I tried to avoid conflict, the more I felt the need to push. And it took me time to really understand what was really happening on these moments.
Sometimes, when a person moves towards silence, the other person moves towards intensity. Not because they want to hurt each other, but because they regulate emotions differently. And when those differences meet, something powerful can surface.
I was with a man who was very calm, gentle, often accommodating. He didn't like conflict, or at least, he preferred not to speak when the emotions were still high. If we were heated, he would step back slightly. Not to ignore me, but to avoid saying something sharp that he might regret later. And I understood that, at least rationally, but emotionally, it was very different. When something irritated me, I needed to say it immediately. If he had done something I didn't like, or done differently from how I would have, or forgotten something important, I felt the urge to express it right away. Sometimes I could stay calm, explain myself, remain centered. But other times I would explode. I would raise my voice, ask him how he could possibly think that what he had done was acceptable. And the more he stayed quiet, the more I escalated.
When one partner withdraws to calm down and the other one needs immediate expression, a polarity can form. Very often, the one who steps back does so because they lean towards an avoidant pattern. Conflicts feel overwhelming and distance feel regulating. And the one who escalates often leads towards an anxious pattern. Silence feels threatening. They need answers. They need reassurance, immediate resolution. One seeks space, the other one seeks closeness. One lowers the volume, the other one raises it. Neither is wrong, neither is right. They are simply different ways to cope with emotional intensity. And it's important to say, not everyone that asks for space is avoidant. A secure partner can calmly say, this is not the right moment to talk, let's come back to this when we feel both calmer. This isn't withdrawal, is more emotional maturity.
That happened inside me on these moments. When he stayed there, silent, quiet, almost shrinking, I couldn't stop. It was if a force was push me upward, as if I had to feel the entire emotional space between us. I felt bigger, louder, almost above him. Energetically, it was like I had to compensate for the distance it was growing between us. And the more it seemed small, the less I could contain myself. It's hard to admit this, but sometimes I felt almost predatory, not physically, but energetically, as if I wanted to overpower the silence. And afterwards, I didn't feel powerful. I felt exhausted and alone.
Intensity can sometimes mask vulnerability. When we feel unheard, or disconnected, or afraid of being dismissed, anger can feel like power. But underneath that power, there is often something softer. A fear of not being seen, a fear of being abandoned, a fear of not being enough. And when the other person retreats, these fears can become louder.
At some point, we realized that something had to change. Not because we didn't love each other, but because this dynamic was exhausting both of us. So we introduced something simple. A pause, a timeout. When things become too heated, we would step away. Not as punishment, not as silence used against each other, but as a way to return to ourselves. Sometimes it means going for a walk, sometimes sitting in another room, breathing, letting the wave pass. And when we came back, we weren't enemies anymore. We were two adults who loved each other, trying to understand each other.
Taking space is not running away from responsibility. It's not necessarily avoidance. When done consciously, it's a way of preventing damage. It's recognizing that in that moment, neither person is truly listening. They are both reacting. So stepping away can be a way of protecting the relationship, not escaping it.
What I learned from that relationship is that being louder doesn't mean being stronger, and being calm doesn't mean being weak. His silence wasn't indifference, it was protection. My intensity wasn't cruelty, it was fear, unprocessed emotion. We were reacting from different survival patterns. And once I could see that, I stopped needing to dominate the moment. I could pause, breathe, and speak. Not to overpower, but to connect, to understand.
Healthy love is an absence of conflict. It's the willingness to grow inside it. It's choosing to learn how the other person reacts, what their wounds are, how they regulate, what their timing is. It's understanding that not every conflict is a threat to the relationship. Sometimes it's an invitation to become stronger, to build solutions together, to build a space where communication feels safe and open, respectful, where both people feel heard and neither has to disappear for the other to feel powerful. That is how couples grow, not by avoiding conflicts, but by learning how to move through it together.